airplane is where you're on a wave and you do a hard carve and you do aerial one bow end and you land back in a back surf. And the reason I like it is because you can get really high out of the water with it. And when you do that hard carve, your boat goes up in the air, and when you throw it down, you can clear your entire boat out of the water.
To get your boat out of the water and vertical, otherwise known as an air blunt, there's a few tips that's going to make this thing work. Step one, you're going to want to have a wave that's going to work for you. The way to know whether the wave you're surfing is big enough to air blunt is simply to carve to the top of the wave, and if you can ride down the wave with any speed at all, you can air blunt on it. It does not have to be a giant wave, just needs to have a little room for driving upstream. Now, in order to get your boat vertical and out of the water, you're going to go in these steps. Step one, carve to the top of the wave. Step two, the moment you feel yourself dropping down into the wave, you're going to do the same motion that you would do with a lean clean. You're going to drop an edge, lean back a little bit to get your stern to dig in and your bow to rise by lifting your knees, and then almost instantaneously, you're going to lift your other knee super hard, meaning you're going to change your edge from one edge to the other. What that does is essentially pops the stern out of the water. You're essentially reeling the bow up, and by popping the stern out of the water, now your whole boat's vertical. And that's what you're looking for. Now, all you need to do to be able to complete the move is get a bow initiation stroke in the water fast enough to get your bow to come through almost weightless through the wave and set you down in a back surf. Common mistakes that cause you to flush off of the wave are, number one, doing the air blunt too late. It's very tempting, and when you see people first learning the air blunt, they come down the wave, they start riding in, and they try to do a couple bounces before throwing the air blunt. By that time, you're already at the bottom of the wave, and you have no potential for getting any real air, meaning you're as low in the water as you're going to get. So tip number one is you want to try your air blunt as high on the wave as possible. With that height, you've got the ability to fall down into the trough, and that's where you get your air from. The other reason you want to do the air blunt high on the wave is because when you land the air blunt in a back surf, you can still ride up into the wave, or at least be stationary. If you do the air blunt too late, way down in the wave, what's going to happen is when you land, you're going to have a lot of speed rushing back up the wave and maybe flush all the way up the back. If you're not getting the boat vertical, if you're just going flat and essentially doing a roundhouse, it usually has to do with not dropping enough edge initially before you switch to your blunting edge. A lot of people think that the problem is they're just not dropping enough edge to do the blunt, but the reality is you need to do a lot of initial edge to get the bow up, and then when you flip the other edge, it naturally goes vertical. If you try to do the bounce really flat, it's really easy to end up going flat on your next edge. Last but not least, to make sure you can stick your air blunt, when you land your air blunt, make sure that you flatten the boat out back when you're backwards and take a good backstroke to lock yourself in the wave. With a little bit of practice, and as you start working your way up the wave and doing your air blunt higher, you're going to find that you can land and you don't even need the backstroke, simply because you're able to throw the blunt without crashing back into the wave fast. And that's when you're going to be ready for linking something else to the air blunt. Very cool. So now you want to make your air blunt from little air blunts to big air blunts. Well, certainly there's two main ways to do that. Number one, the better the wave is, the bigger the wave is, and the steeper the wave is, the higher you can air blunt. So number one, try to find a bigger wave if you can. But number two, on any wave, you can use this technique to go bigger. The technique is simply throwing a lot more energy into the initial edge, really lifting your knees as high as you can, reeling the bow up. Not only is your bow going in the air, but your butt's lifting off the water. The higher your butt is off the water, when you switch the edge, the higher your boat's going to go. And also, remember, the sooner you take off and the higher you are on the wave, the higher you're going to go. So those two techniques are going to launch you bigger, better, higher, and faster.